Ass Blast. So, Late Night with My Asshole is a film that came out last year in 2025, and it's a really interesting, unique take on the horror genre. And essentially, what it's about is this dude who starts a new late night show, trying to compete with the most popular one, which is some dude named like Johnny something that runs it. It'd be like the equivalent of like a Jay Leno or Jimmy Fallon or Jimmy Kimmel or one of those people, but basically trying to compete with them. So he launches one called Night Owls, and it's going pretty well at first. And then his wife ends up getting diagnosed with terminal lung cancer, and she's a non-smoker, so of course it's very devastating to everybody. Um, Basically, long story short, she ends up passing away. So he kind of has to take up the reins of this show while maintaining this cheerful persona, blah, 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 blah. And essentially, he has a really hard time with it, struggles, and the ratings kind of tank for a little bit, and the show gets ass blasted by the public. And basically, they're coming up on their Halloween special, and then this dude, I honestly forgot his name, guys, because, guys, I have to be honest with you. There were some things that I really liked about this movie, but it's such a slow burn, and it is. I don't know if this movie won any Oscars, but I looked on Rotten Tomatoes. It said it had a 97%, and I was like, okay, hold your horses. That is a little bit excessive, don't you think? Like, it was pretty good towards the end, but it was incredibly boring in the midsection. But one thing I will say is it's a very unique take on the horror genre because this whole movie is shot as if it was made in like the 1980s or something like that. They keep changing aspect ratios though, so it was kind of interesting. Like, they would have like a 4:3 for a lot of it, and then it would switch over to like 16:9. Then it would go to some other stuff and blah 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 blah. It would switch between color and black and white, and everything is like intentionally really shitty quality. So that was kind of cool, I guess, because guys, it genuinely does feel like you're watching like a TV broadcast from that time period. Like, if somebody walked in and saw you watching it, they'd probably think you were watching something from like the 80s or something like that. So that was really interesting, and I thought I would hate it, but I actually kind of thought that was pretty cool what they did. So that was pretty cool. Yeah, the acting was pretty good, but guys, one thing, my main problem with this, so this movie called Late Night with the Devil, and guys, I am so tired of seeing possession movies. Like, every horror movie is just somebody gets possessed, and that's the whole point. And it's like, we've seen this a billion times now, and it's always the same. It's some girl who starts acting funny, looks up, her face looks kind of weird, and she starts talking in this voice and being really weird and saying your mom's a cunt and your mother sucks cocks in hell or whatever the fuck that says in The Exorcist. And then the head turns around and stuff, and like, it did just start to do that honestly at one point, and I was kind of like, oh my goodness, like, here we go again. But then it kind of goes in a different direction because, okay, spoiler alert, you probably don't care, who cares, but basically this dude, he tries to talk to the devil because it's called Late Night with the Devil, and it's on Halloween and stuff. It's their Halloween special, and it's basically like, this is his chance to redeem himself, blah 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 blah. And then so people start getting possessed and stuff, and they basically like hypnotize everybody, and they bring in these random people who are like, I don't know if they're like devil worshippers. What, guys, honestly, because the middle was so boring, I kind of checked out for a little bit, and I was just like, okay, like, make it stop, you know. And then it picks back up when the final third act happens, you know. And that, at that point, I was like, wow, this is actually really cool because there's like some actually pretty good practical effects and stuff. But one thing I do have to say is I feel like because of the shitty quality intentionally, they kind of used that. They hid behind that for some of the special effects, I feel like the special effects, some of them weren't as good because they just relied on it being bad quality. I don't know if you kind of have to see it for it to make sense, guys. And basically, it was really good at the end. I was like, man, this is actually pretty good. So I would have turned it off, honestly, if it hadn't picked back up. And I probably would have rated this movie like a D. But it really redeemed itself. And, yeah, by the ending, I was like, dang, that's kind of interesting. And one thing I do have to say is I was getting kind of bored, so I did look up how it ended halfway through on... I just searched... No, I didn't even do it on purpose. So I literally just searched Late Night with the Devil because I was like, what score did this movie get on Rotten Tomatoes? Because I was just curious. And it said 97%, and I was like, okay, that's a bit of a stretch, don't you think? But this movie is totally... It is total critic bait. Like, the changing aspect ratios, the old-timey feel, the just so much about it was just total like trying to be artsy and stuff, which can either most of the time for me it really pisses me off. But for this one, I actually didn't mind it. I thought it was actually pretty well done when it's like doing the broadcast stuff from the 80s. So I thought that was actually kind of cool. So yeah, credit for that. And then it gets starts off fine, gets really boring, and then gets pretty exciting by the end. So it's kind of a roller coaster of a movie. But I expected to hate this movie because every time I saw the preview in theaters, I would just say, "Oh my god, that looks so bad! Like that just looks like shit." Because I don't know if you guys have seen that movie, In a Violent Nature, dude. I was recording, so sorry. Quick side note: I was recording and I kept talking for so long, and then my phone ran out of storage, which I use in my camera. So I was just talking for like 5 minutes, and it wasn't even recording. So get back to what I was saying. In a Violent Nature, I don't know if you guys remember that movie. Genuinely one of the shittiest movies ever made, in my opinion. That one where that killer is like walking through the woods, and like literally the whole movie is just him walking through the woods. But the way that movie was shot reminds me of how this movie kind of looks, because it's the same aspect ratio. Like the dominant aspect ratio is like that 4:3 and stuff. But I expected that to piss me off about this movie, and it really didn't. But like I was saying, the movie starts out fine, gets really boring, and then gets pretty exciting by the end. And then, spoiler alert here again. So, the things that I liked were some of the practical effects. Like that worm part was pretty cool, but I do feel like if it was shot in like high quality today, like today's standards, it would look a lot worse. But because it's on like that really shitty like quality old timey stuff, it looked pretty good on screen. And I can't remember if I already said this, but because of my phone, I had to take 2 takes. But I'm so tired of the like possession shit, because I feel like every movie that comes out, every horror movie, is just somebody gets possessed and it's like a little girl and she starts doing the exorcist thing, like your mother sucks cocks in hell or whatever the fuck, and then their head spins around and people start flying around the room and stuff. And that's just getting really old for me. And this movie does do that for a little bit, but then it kind of redeems itself. But yeah, because basically the way this movie ends, it's kind of throughout the third act, you're wondering, is this real or is it not? And you're kind of like, because people are getting hypnotized and stuff, and then stuff's happening, and then they watch the clip, and it's like, oh, that didn't actually happen. So that's happening a lot, and then you're kind of wondering, is that real or is it not, or what? Blah 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 blah. And then it turns out, the way this movie ends, he has all these different flashbacks, and you're wondering if the dude's hypnotized or whatever. And then basically it just shows the studio, and everyone's dead except for him. So I'm like, I might have to go watch an ending explain video for this, because I was kind of like, okay, so did he kill all of them? Did he get possessed? And I know some of you might just be thinking this guy's an idiot because I didn't really understand it, but that's fine because I was only kind of half paying attention for some of it. But yeah, I thought it was pretty good, like ending to the movie, and I thought it was actually kind of cool. It kind of reminded me of, oh shit, I can't spoil that one. The ending to this one kind of reminded me of the ending to another movie. Spoiler alert. Okay, so Begonia. That's what it reminded me of a little bit. So Begonia was much better, much more well done though, in my opinion. I much prefer Begonia to this one. But yeah, I'm gonna overall give this one either a C plus or a B minus. I'll B minus. Okay, B minus. It was decent. The acting was good. It is just a little slow, and it's kind of a roller coaster, and it switches between all these aspect ratios. And I was kind of like, okay, just make up your mind. Just pick one and keep going with it, because it felt a little incohesive at times. And I really don't like the black and white. But yeah. Anyways, let me know what you thought of Late Night with the Devil down below. All right. And please subscribe to the channel and like this video. Thank you. Peace.